Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 108 Inches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott, the Motor City Madmouth. Anyways, let me go over the topics pretty quick. Well, all you need to do is look at the title of the Roots Ball Classic, and that'll tell you that we're talking about baseball road to the World Series. So we're going to recap the Division Series. We're going to make predictions on the League Championship Series, and we'll proceed from there. Let me introduce the crew right to left. George Eichhorn.
Good to be back on, guys. Looking forward to the show.
And glad to have you. Eric Katz.
Thanks for having me, pal.
You're welcome. And Trent Clark. As long as I keep calling him Trent, I won't get agitated instead of something else. And this guy's great, okay? Then again, all of you are. And last but not least, the barber.
What's happening, everybody? Snip, snip.
There you go. Well, we're going to snip it, all right. We're going to recap the Division Series. The Yankees defeated the Kansas City Royals 3-1. The Guardians 3-2 over the Detroit Tigers. Mets 3-1 over the Phillies. Dodgers 3-2 over the Pirates. George, okay, any surprises in any of these series or overall?
Well, I don't think there's any real surprises. Of course, the Tiger fans were anticipating the big upset, but once the Tigers let Game 4 slip away at home, it was a tall order, even with Skubal going for the last game. But, there was still a lot of hope that they could pull it out. But realistically, Cleveland is a better team this year. There's no question about that. Better than Detroit was. I wasn't surprised by the other results. I mean, my prediction, as you guys know, in the early part of spring was Philadelphia to win the World Series. Well, that didn't happen. And I should have listened to you fellas the last few weeks because you guys kind of sniffed that wasn't going to happen. Philly was going to fold like a deck of cards. So is it an upset? Yes, but the Mets came on so strong. So that didn't surprise me. Dodgers, I expected them to win. And I also, the Yankees, of course, over Kansas City. I mean, that was another great long shot story like Detroit's. If Kansas City could have pulled off that upset, but they just couldn't do it. So I guess the only surprise I got, Scott, is Philadelphia fading, as I still had hopes that they would be able to make it to the NLCS.
Not alone. I thought the Phillies were going to go to the World Series against the Yankees, but I'll get to my opinions later. Yours is the one everybody I want to get to now. All right, Eric, you heard it. The end results for those series. Any surprises, Eric?
Well, I'd say the way the Tigers took out the Astros on the road. I mean, they were going up against an experienced Houston squad that's been there, done that. That on paper, you could say they were old hands out of October. Well, they shut down the heart of the Astros lineup. Got to give it to AJ Hinch though, with the way he was able to craft a pitching strategy like none other. Where yes, it eventually wore out, but the fact that he was able to take out the Astros in 2 games, I mean, it didn't go the distance at all. Houston's offense was shut down by Detroit, so you got to give him the credit where credit's due, and also the fact that Kansas City took out a Baltimore Orioles squad, which people expected this was the year where they would make a little noise. Yeah, they kind of faded down. They thankfully faded down the stretch and ultimately gave the AL East to my Yankees, but ultimately I was surprised with how they faded on the road as well. So other than that, though, the division series kind of played out like how I thought they would. Detroit gave it a good run, which, to be truthful, I think they have a winning window that they can actually work with right now. But which that remains to be seen. If the younger Ilitch can channel his father and actually give that team more support. But nevertheless, though, aside from that, the division series kind of played out like I thought it would, except Detroit put up a much better fight because ultimately the better team won.
You know what, Eric? I'm glad you brought up that Baltimore-Kansas City series. I really am. Because I'll tell you one thing, a lot of people were riding Baltimore for a while, but yeah. Kansas City, more power to them. All right, we'll turn it over to Trent.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see our stats from last week, what we said would happen in that next series, because everyone was high last Monday night on the Padres, and I was too, but not. I think my comment was, don't expect the Dodgers to roll over. What I didn't expect was 24 straight scoreless innings. I mean, holy goodness. I mean, just put a shutdown on the Padres offense, which is formidable. So, this is a little bit of a scene of things to come. I know tonight, the Dodgers got beat, so it's split 1-1 now in that series. But yeah, I was pretty impressed with the Dodgers' ability to put a shutdown system in place. So that was very impressive. Yeah, I'm disappointed in the Tigers. I thought they had their chances. I do think I agree with everyone here that probably the team's a little better in Cleveland than the team is from A to Z in Detroit. But we know the best team doesn't always win. Timely hitting gets a lot of things done, and
Right.
I thought the Tigers had their chances. They had opportunities down the stretch, and you need big hits, and experience matters. And so it was a good series. Great one to watch. I always like to see a final game. Always fun.
Yeah, winner take all. All right, turn over to Mark.
My thoughts have always been, fellas, that you prepare with the end in mind, and I don't feel like Philadelphia did that. I don't feel like they took. September should have been a month where they were trying to figure out who's hot on that team and who can help them going into the playoffs. I think they need to dip into that younger group that they have down in the minors and see who's actually going to help them, because they keep signing all these free agents that, the vast majority of them pan out for them, but still down the stretch, they need some young bats, some young arms to help them once they get to the playoffs. They need some hot players. So that's my thoughts on Philadelphia. I got to be honest with you, I was very disappointed in them. And with Baltimore, I think I said this maybe last week that, they've got all the same kind of guy playing on that team. They don't really have any exceptional speed. They don't have any exceptional power. They have virtually, the 25, 28 home run guy. They have the 80 RBI guy. They need more of a balance on that team, and that's the only way they're going to get to the next level. I don't think you'll see Santander and Corbin Burns back there, from what I understand. But they do have guys in the minors that should be able to come up and give them a jolt, maybe get them over the top. I was definitely disappointed in the Padres. The Padres, they were red hot, and they just cooled off like nothing I've ever seen. And I did think that they could take it to the Dodgers, but the Dodgers are the Dodgers. They spend all that money and they're getting production out. I watched last night's game. Just too busy to get into today's stuff. But man, when those guys came up and started hitting the ball, Freeman, and it was an onslaught. And Ohtani, he's just going to bring it every game. So it'll be interesting. And the other team that disappointed me was Detroit, but I agree, you guys. Cleveland was just a little bit better prepared to play them, and they're coached very well. And I can see Detroit being in the hunt, though. I think Eric said this. I can see Detroit being in the hunt for a handful of years coming up here.
Interesting point by everybody. Number one, by the way, how are you, Dusty? Glad to have you on tonight. Here's what you have. I'm surprised Bryce Harper is still not playing baseball in the postseason. If there's any player I want to see win a ring in my lifetime, it's Bryce Harper, period. Number two, Shohei Ohtani. First trip to the playoffs, boy, he must be liking his postseason baseball. He didn't see any of it in Anaheim, and all it takes you have to do is go down the freeway to see postseason baseball. As for the Detroit Tigers, what they need is more starting pitching. They got away with it for 2 months to get into the playoffs, and what E.J. Hinch did with that staff was absolutely brilliant. I don't think that they would have given the New York Yankees a series at all. I think the Tigers, had they have advanced, may have been swept either 4-0 or may have gotten a game out of it. I don't think So it's better to bow out in a winner take all, build for next year, than look bad against the Yankees. As I understand, the Tigers did not fare well with runners in scoring position, and you can't get away with that and expect to have absolutely perfect pitching. So the focus really should be on for Chris Ilitch is we need to get AJ more starting pitching.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
You can't. That will not last over 162 game series.
Scott, you can make the argument too that they need a little more instant offense, particularly in the infield. I know Willie Adames is out there, and Javi Baez has been an albatross at that position, which if the Tigers actually got better when he got hurt.
Well, that's true, but let me ask you a question, Eric. You brought this up. What can you do with Javi Baez at this particular point? Is there a team willing to take on that series? Well,
no, I'd say, like, if you're the Tigers at this point with Baez, I'd say you just have to eat that contract. It was a disaster. It was a disaster from the start, and enough waiting around. That was done by the previous regime. Al Avila should have known that there was no way he could sustain the arc that he was on with the Cubs and during the half a season with the New York Mets. It was obvious that it was going to come crashing down, and it did. But Al Avila thought that he could get a little something of it. He overpaid for Baez, and now the Tigers are stuck with him until that contract goes away. He's probably the worst free agent bust in recent memory.
No debate there. None.
No. Can't argue with that.
I was hoping that they would bring on Carlos Correa, who obviously played with AJ Hinch, but unfortunately that never played out for the Detroit fans. All right. Well, you know what? We're going to stay on the Mets team, and then Candy's going to give us a station break in a moment. Speaking of the Mets, they owed the third worst record in the National League on June 3rd, 24 up, 35 down. Tell you what, came a long way, didn't they, George?
Yes, they have, and of course, I always like to root for guys I know, and that's why I'm rooting for them, because of JD Martinez and, of course, Jose Iglesias, who nobody really wanted. I mean, he came on board that team, and he just took them by storm. He loosened those guys up. He started singing his Spanish songs and stuff, and it sounds corny maybe to some people, but heck, it really loosened up that locker room. It made the game fun for the Mets and exciting, and for the fans, of course, too. And, it's something like that really. And plus, he hit over 300 when he got back into the lineup regularly for the New York Mets. So, I mean, I loved him here with Detroit. I felt the Tigers got rid of Iglesias way too soon. And the same with JD Martinez. I mean, they rescued Jamie from that Astros debacle that he had. Didn't have his career going anywhere, and he had a great time in Detroit. But again, that was a different time, a different era, and the old man Ilitch was spending more money than obviously that couldn't be sustained. Plus, he got sick near the end. Mr. Ilitch died eventually. But all I'm saying is that, yeah, the Mets, good story, Scott. A lot of fun, a lot of happiness there. And, hey, they bounced back. They took it on the chin yesterday, but they bounced back in Game 2 to even that series. So they got a lot going for themselves, but I'm happy for those Detroit Connection guys, too.
Well, again, bear in mind, as I just said, George, June 2nd, 24-35, and they're one of 4 teams that are playing. All right, but that's the alternative, Eric.
Well, with the Mets, I mean, it certainly helped that you got players like Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor who were underperforming, and you could probably argue that Pete Alonso didn't have the greatest walk year as he's about to enter free agency, because he's really just a home run or nothing guy. But they always had the players. I mean, obviously the pitching staff you could probably put some question marks on, but they always had the players. It was just that they were being, the best way to describe the Mets is they were being, the Mets. And they always had it. It was just a matter of them putting it together, which eventually I'd say adding Jose Iglesias was a real difference maker in that clubhouse. Mark Vientos getting hot like he has certainly made all the difference. I mean, it didn't help losing Jeff McNeil for the year with the wrist injury, but you have a guy like Vientos and some youth over there. It can definitely shake up a lineup.
All right, Trent.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a great story for New York. Obviously 9 games out of 500. At that point, doesn't look promising. It's fabulous that the fans and the locals got behind them. I think they've got a pretty good base there in New York. Of course, everyone wants a winner in New York, and I just think this place is going to be rocking tomorrow night. Come back from the Dodgers, they're split. They somewhat have an advantage headed home. So it's a good time to be a New York Mets fan. I think it's going to be a fun series. I think they're going to go toe to toe and see what's possible. Again, kind of going back to your point, Motor City, is that they're playing loose, having a bunch of fun. I also, George, love the Detroit connection. It's oftentimes you got these unsung heroes in the playoffs that absolutely show up, and the big guns are showing up for New York, which is good. Lindor and Alonso playing well. So I feel like if they've got the pitching to go the distance on this one, we could be looking at a Subway Series.
Mm-hmm. That'd be fun. I'd love that.
Good points, Trent. Okay, turn over to the barber.
For the amount of money they spent going into this season, they should be where they are. Apparently, when they started their upswing, they had a players-only meeting. I just read this the other day. They had a players-only meeting, and it was Lindor, it was Alonso. And they basically said, listen, we're playing way below where we need to play. We need to go out there, relax, play baseball the way we know how to, play together, pick each other up, and go forward. And they demonstrated it by getting to where they are today. I thought it was really interesting, though, that they actually took accountability and that those guys had a players-only meeting to get it right in that locker room. The kid at second base, Iglesias, that's the kid at second base, right? Am I right? Who's the kid at second base for the Mets?
I'm thinking either Iglesias or Vientos.
Yeah, one of them absolutely has been a breath of fresh air. Also, they were talking about in this article, they were talking about him and how he's kind of. I think you guys even said it. He's uplifted that locker room to the degree that between him keeping it loose and those guys holding others accountable, it's put them in a great position for your Subway Series.
Well, here's the thing. The best thing that ever happened to New York Mets, Steve Cohen bought the franchise.
Yeah.
I mean, period. Think about it. Seriously? Really? Steve Cohen. He
got Bernie Madoff to go away.
Well, that too. Good point. Got Bernie Madoff to go away. But this guy's not afraid to spend money to get the best players on the planet. He doesn't care where he has to go get them. Pete Alonso's decides to walk, you better, if I were Pete Alonso, I better think about, if you're going to walk, you better make sure you go to a contending team that puts you in a position to win. Otherwise, the grass isn't always greener. So, but Steve Cohen was gleaming about Francisco Lindor. What did he pay him? $340-some million to go there. And now this guy here is making such a difference in the postseason. So, and now I hear he's looking to do some build around Citi Field. Though this guy's putting his money where his mouth is, in the right place. So, more power to Steve Cohen. I predicted the Mets would end up beating the Brewers. I had a feeling they could beat the Phillies, but the Phillies played so well all year. But, more power to them. All right, back to the chat room. Let's go to Jay. Down with the Yankees. Okay, all right. And by the way, Jay, Katie and I are working on getting you those that package in the next day or so. So we'll just let you know where we stand. She'll call you up and let you know what's going on. Okay, seriously, really, man, I love this, Jay. For a lot of you guys seeing it for the first time, this guy has been an unbelievable addition to contributing on all platforms, and he's a super knowledgeable individual too. So, Trent, how much your engagement did you have with ownership when you were a coach? Little, some, or a lot? All right, you can answer that. That's a good question, Jay. Keep on coming about.
Well, Dick Jacobs was involved, which was fun. And so with Cleveland, it was a great experience. Artie Moreno was very involved. Disney was involved. We obviously had a good year under Disney in 2002. Mm-hmm. So Eisner and some of the folks were around. We would have an annual meeting with the Disney folks, and Eisner would be there. So that was always interesting. But they have a designated kind of they had a president of Anaheim Sports, which he wore his claim to fame at being a president of both the hockey team of the Ducks and the Angels. So it was an interesting way they did the administrative work. I don't think he had a lot of athletic experience, but certainly probably business experience. And so I think from the beginning, Ilitch was very involved with the Tigers, and I was there when he just took over, 93, 94, when he just bought the team from Monahan. First order of business, get the domino signs down and get the little Caesar signs up. And so, that was an interesting indoctrination as a 23-year-old into the business of sports, because it wasn't about signing players. It was about getting signage, right? And that was old Tiger Stadium, and they were working hard to get a new stadium set up. So Ilitch really got that done, and it's an absolute focal point of downtown Detroit now, and still is a beautiful ballpark. So well done there. I think ownership, for the most part, other than kind of Disney being the corporate, the individual owners have a lot to do. In fact, I think a lot of people would argue Artie Moreno's has too much to do with the Angels now. I mean, given I think it's been a decade since they've been over 500. That's alarming. And the buck's going to stop at the owner, and he's pretty involved. So, got to do something there.
All right. Oh, Eric, you got a little bit of a compliment from Mr. Burstein. Good stuff. So why don't you respond to it?
Yeah.
What's going on, Eric? Cat's looking good, brother.
Thank you, Joshua. Always appreciate the kind words.
There you go, Joshua. I mean, you're growing on Joshua. He's starting to like you. He's starting to become a fan of yours, Eric. That's what we try to do, is have fans. Mm-hmm. And Joshua's certainly giving you a little bit of JB love. Okay. So, all right, Jay, back. Generally, owners that are involved depends on, is there a particular, or was that the one we had on there before? So go ahead, read this one, George.
Yeah, Jay says, so generally owners are involved, and obviously it depends on the owner and organization, which Trent just talked about. Is there a general preference? I'm asking because when I think of the teams in the playoffs now versus the outs.
That's a little
complicated. I agree with Trent. I mean, every owner is different. We got a guy in Detroit really that doesn't have a clue, and I hate to say this, but you could probably guess which team, and that's the Pistons. Tom Gores loves sports, but boy, oh boy, he's an absentee owner, and he has tried everything, firing and hiring, and it's not going well. But I agree, Trent, with what you said, and thanks for mentioning about Mr. Ilitch, because, he definitely wanted to build that team, and he had, and just loved the sport, obviously, of baseball. He was once a farmhand for the Tigers way back when.
Now,
go ahead.
Nowadays, gone are the days where the owner was just the name on the stadium, or he was kind of in the background. The operations now with sports have become just too big, where the head guy kind of has to be involved. Sometimes he's involved on the player on the player end of it a little more than he should, a la Dan Snyder. But nowadays the owner to some extent has to be involved. The operation just is way too large now. It's not just about tickets and popcorn and things like that. There is just so much that goes into it now that you're going to see the owner in the office, not just in his suite eating a hot dog. No, he's going to be involved in the quote Jerry Jones, from the socks to the jocks. He's but it's just how it is now. Sports it's just grown. I mean, now these teams are more than just teams. They're businesses, and that's just the way it is now.
Interesting.
It's a new day on an investment, right? Dan Snyder, I think, was involved with a lot of employees, maybe that he shouldn't have.
Yeah.
But I think now when you look at the valuation, I think originally people were buying these teams as statuses of their wealth. Like, hey, I really love sports, I want to buy this. Yeah. Now, as you've seen the Yankees and the $1 billion that they are now worth with the Yes Network and some strategic moves. Most professional franchises are nearing the $1 billion mark, and most were bought 15, 20 years ago for under $250 million. So the ROI now on these teams has become significant, and so the wealth of the owners has become significant. So if you're focused on your pattern of wealth, why wouldn't you focus on your team? Because it looks like now it'll be a pretty big part of your portfolio, regardless of what your company and organization that you originally built in order to afford that. And, and you see some big names, Dodgers, Magic Johnson, also involved with the Redskins. Like, Magic's involved in buying pro teams, and he gets involved in these ownership groups. And he's loving the ride. Last time I talked to him, he's like, this stuff is awesome.
He's it also comes down to too, like not just having an owner. You're seeing celebrities get involved, and get like a small percentage. Like Patrick Mahomes, probably the best quarterback in football right now. He owns 1% of the Royals, so it's now it's becoming kind of not just one person having control. It's kind of just about shelling it out to people and kind of wanting to put some butts in the seats as well.
All right, let me mention Joshua. He was asking me if I caught the Panthers game today. Josh, the only answer I give you that is I'll be more than happy. I was not. I'll explain when we do our FaceTime calls instead. I'll leave it at that. Okay, so Jay in playoff versus out of playoffs. All right, looking good. Oh, look at you, Eric. Looking good tonight by Dusty. There you go. Keep it rolling. Okay, thanks. I appreciate the answers and feedback. Great insight. There you go. Yeah, look at this, Eric, man. I like you when we put these things up. It's looking exceptionally sharp.
He paid people tonight.
Yeah,
Huh?
he's got his fan club working tonight, Barbara.
There you go. Hey, more power to him. See, Eric, come on.
They got some-
I appreciate
They got some
the
time
love
off.
I'll be humble
George.
about the kitchen. The kitchen. It ain't that big.
George, they got some time off at IHOP tonight to come on online and give them some love.
Oh, I thought they worked at Long John Silver's. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Joshua, I saw the score. So, yeah, I think from what I hear, it was a great game. And there you go, Eric. Got to give the man his due tonight. Comes on tonight. Listen, Eric had to make a tough sacrifice tonight.
Oh, he's got one eye on the screen. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. He's still joining you, sick man. Seriously, really?
I came on, and it's not like I'm not staring at the TV going like this. I actually don't even have the TV on. I actually know how to keep focus, unlike the other generation, Gen Z.
Hey, come on! Give this guy some slack, pal. Here's the deal, and I'm gonna say this now. Okay, I'm gonna have my little rant. This guy here gave up his Yankees game to join you, and look what the heck is happening in the chat room.
And the lights, and that's not the screen. The light's just in my eye.
Yeah, that's okay. So, Icorn, before you sit there and go out there and say something like this, do me one favor, sick them, man. Include quotes in your stories, okay? Because I'll tell you, you have George. A lot of good information. Wait a minute. Yeah. I'm talking here. All right, here.
Careful, George.
So here's the deal, Icorn. You include quotes in your stories. Understanding the back of your mind in Journalism 101. Post-game is every bit as important than just showing up. So there you go, Mr. Icorn, from your publisher to you. Add quotes and include the word post-game between your ears, okay? That's all I have to say. So I like these guys. Now they're really off on a roll. Hey, we can keep this show going on with the way the chat room is lit up.
Hey, careful, George. You remember the movie Jurassic Park where the T-Rex kind of came out of that electric fence and was about to rip up them Jeeps on that island? You're coming dangerously close, pal.
Okay.
Now, how did we get Long John's series in Long John?
I know who Howard Cosell. I know who Howard Cosell is.
Yeah. Well, these guys know because I've been ripping Cosell apart the last few shows. You weren't on that, but if you look at some of the tape, you'll see Long John Silver's Slap that Flagler Nature's. All right, whatever. Now, don't get me hungry. Okay, I don't want to do that. I already had what I had. So Jay said, I heard Eric is a Howard Cosell fan. All right, okay, whatever.
I know who he is. Can't say I'm a fan. I can't really say I'm a fan of him just because I didn't really have a lot of knowing him. But I'm aware of who they of who he is. Actually, I have a book of him actually on my shelf over there.
So Joshua was asking me, have I had Long John? So it's been a little while. All right. So, and actually we have one here in Pompano right off of Federal Highway, I think, sample. So we'll get there one.
I think I've been to that one.
So Joshua, question for Eric. What's all the stuff on your fridge?
I got Spider-Man hanging over there. I got a friend of mine who was doing a fundraiser that I was at her event for her for the Chicago Marathon. It's a little magnet of her dog's nose. Then I got a couple brewer schedules right there, and that one's a beer opener for those who drink. Trust me, when you live in Wisconsin, you have to have one of those.
Well, now,
that's like a law, I think. Actually, you have to have a beer magnet opener on your fridge.
Yep.
True,
I actually
true.
have one on my I have one on my keychain too, so I'm prepared.
course.
So in case people want to come over, I'll be all prepared to serve.
These are the only guys who tailgate for a knitting club. I'm telling you right now, it's pretty serious up there.
Oh, it's tailgate country here. If they tailgate, it is tailgate country here.
All right, let's see. Well, let's see. Let's keep going. Joshua, I'm proud of this guy. He's on a roll. Scott, Eric, Trader, Howard Cosell, fan book on the shelf. Great stuff. Okay, now let's go ahead. The popular one is gone. I think. I don't know, Joshua. Do me a favor. Find me one that's nearby. We're going to get to it. Candy and I enjoy.
Go to Fort Lauderdale. It's in Fort Lauderdale. Just go there.
I don't know. I'll have to find out. I don't drive. as much.
I've probably been there when I was last in South Florida.
Yeah, my other half does a lot of the driving these days. I don't do as much for medical reasons. But all right, I had Long John Silver's once at Pompano. I took one bite and threw that. Oh, tell me how you really feel. Okay, just find me another one. Do you drink? So now Dusty said, do you drink beer, Eric, or smoke weed? Well, come on, seriously, Dusty? Just because you do it, huh?
I drink beer like the normal people.
Yeah, the other one, I don't know. All right, but with that said, I don't know if this was a George break because he's saying some interesting things, or is it a Candy break? We're going to go to a station break nonetheless.
Candy for Halloween. I'll take that.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. All right, let's go to a station break. We'll bring on the Candy woman.
So the nearest one, Long John Silver's to us, Scott, would be Oakland Park, Florida. So it's
Okay.
quite a little bit of ways. But
All right.
South Florida Tribune published a book last November. It is called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by none other than your host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. And the foreword was written none other than George Eichhorn. It talks about Scott's 40 plus years in the media industry and how it has changed over that time. Get your copy today. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Apple and Google Books. You can also find a link to it on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. A link to that, a link to our merchandise store, Scott's writings, George's writings, my pictures. If you listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Monday nights, we talk baseball. Tuesday nights, we talk football. Wednesdays and Thursday nights, you never know what we're going to be talking about. As well as Thursday nights, we talk hockey for those hockey fans out there. And then if you want to advertise or sponsor a show, call Scott, 954-304-4941. If you want to email us any topic ideas, southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Back to the regular scheduled programming.
Thank you, Candy. All right, let's go to Jay's comments. Over under Mets, which Candy predicts via the Brewers will make the World Series. Yeah, kind of give it a take. Versus the Guardians. Also, does MLB leverage favoritism for the Yankees? You know what? Any of you guys can answer this one. I'm just going to leave it out there. And
Jay, that's a dumb comment.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
I
All
do
right,
think MLB shows favoritism towards the Yankees. They are a money cash cow. They know it, and preferential treatment feels like it's given.
If you're saying they have favoritism, why haven't they made it back? Haven't won the World Series in about 15 years?
Okay.
You still got to go do the work. I'm just saying, I think they get best schedule. I think they get best prime time. I mean, if we look back, I'm sure if we talked about nationally televised games, you tell me what the percentage of the Yankees games.
Your Angels beat them a year after they went to the World Series, and they eliminated them in the DS. I can't remember how many games, but they did, and you got a World Series ring out of it. So be happy.
Yeah. Nothing makes me feel better, Eric. I'll be honest. Nothing.
Hey, you took out Barry. They took out Barry Bonds' Giants. So be happy, my friend. Be happy for the.
I'm happy. But Eric, do you not agree that you don't think the Yankees get favoritism by MLB?
If they were to get favoritism by MLB, they would have taken the Houston Astros 2017 World Series ring right off their finger.
You're saying because of the scandal?
Yes, absolutely, the scandal.
What was ever decided with that? Did they just decide just not acknowledge their world championship, or what was actually decided?
Jeff Lunau and AJ Hinch got fired. Well, they were suspended for the year, then got fired. Alex Cora was suspended for the year. The players got immunity because the league basically gave them immunity, saying, "Hey, if you help us here, we won't suspend you." Which you should have. Well, to me, you should have given it to the Black Sox back then. But I digress. But overall, though, it was just that, a few people lost their job, which really didn't mean anything. Hinch is back in the league managing the Tigers. Cora's back with the Red Sox. And Lunau, well, he's doing a soccer team now, but I'm sure if he wanted to come back, a team would hire him. I mean, sports has a way of forgiving some bad people.
Yeah, the
Lucky
quote,
Rose.
the quote of the night is from Trent Clark. You got to do the work. That was good.
You should put
All
that,
right, we'll
put that on the wall,
well-
actually.
Well, that's all right. Hey, listen, that's what makes you guys what you guys are. I mean, nice flow. We had a great flow in the chat room tonight. So we'll go back at you, Eric. Joshua, question for Eric. What are you going to be for Halloween?
Oh, you want to know?
Yeah, well, that's why you asked.
Okay. I'll let you know. I'm going to be I actually am going to be Hugh Hefner for Halloween. I got a costume coming in tomorrow that I'm picking up.
Okay. Well, there you go, Joshua. Question for everyone. Actually, what's it going to be for Halloween? I don't know. Anybody want to answer it?
Well, I didn't think Eric even knew who Hefner was. And if you are going to be him, are you going to wear your, he's famous for this bathrobe that's made out of silk
I got the red.
when he was with his ladies.
I sure do. I got the red robe coming in.
I call that shot. I call that right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's
Eric,
great.
I have no idea what I'm going to be for Halloween. So, I mean, Joshua, I have no idea what I'm going to be for Halloween.
Joshua wants to be you, Scott.
Yeah, he wants to write for me. Hey, listen, I'm looking forward to seeing his stories. He's actually mentioned that he wants to write, so more power to him. What's going on, Jay? Eric, I take everything back I said about you. Looking good. Okay, JK. I don't know what these little abbreviations are. I don't think I'm going to figure it out after all this time. Eric probably cheated for Astros. Some of these are actually comical. They really, really are. So that's why I'm going to read them all. Trent, I appreciate the take. I think favoritism exists and doesn't always cheating, but it does take advantage in certain places. There you go, Eric. View. God, I don't even know what that word is. Is that Jewish?
Yes. Well, no religion here. And as far as no religion here. As far as that comment goes, I'm going to choose to be semantically responsible here.
Okay. All right. Anyways, let's get on to the next topic, and I'm sure these guys will fire up more stuff than I'm going to read. Let's predict the league championship series. The New York Mets and the Dodgers, by the way, are tied. The Dodgers beat the Mets 9-0 game one. The Mets took care of business in game two, 7-3. So they leave Southern California with a split. Okay. Then we have the Yankees at Cleveland. Polar opposites as far as pitching plans. Couldn't be more different. All right, we'll start with the Mets and the Dodgers. Okay, George, give me your thoughts on that series.
Well, the Dodgers are overdue, of course. I mean, the Mets are overdue as well to win it, but I really think that in a long series like that, I'm still going to stick with the Dodgers, but it's going to take all 7 games for them to be successful. I mean, I agree what Trent said, though, that they got some momentum now. They're going back home and they got a split, like you said, in LA. So it's going to be interesting these next 2 games at Citi Field. But I still think that I'm going to still stick with the Dodgers in 7.
Okay, then you have the other series. You have the Yankees and Cleveland.
Yankees have more talent as far as the offense goes. We know that, but that bullpen of the Guardians is unbelievable. This is going to be an interesting series. I still think it's going to be the Yankees in 6 in this one.
Okay, we'll turn it over to Eric.
All right, Dodgers, Mets. That's going to be a good series, actually, because given that both teams are flawed in their own right, it's going to come down to where the ball is going to bounce. Whether the Dodgers pitching can keep it up, that's going to be the key, or are the Mets going to still ride their hot wave they seem to be on this postseason and do it? for me, I really think that this series is going to go the distance. And I got to say that given the Dodgers' propensity to choke in recent years, I got to go with the Mets in 7.
Okay, that's good. All right, Trent.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the Dodgers have too many weapons. And what I just saw and witnessed of a 24-inning shutdown of the Padres, I feel like they could just put the Mets on lockdown at some point too. So I think in the end they'll get through this one and get through the Mets. And I think a lot of the Mets. So I think it's saying something. On the other side, I mean, I'll tell you the other thing that I don't like for the National League is a lot of travel. And I think if it goes 6 or 7 games back and forth cross country, I think it's going to wear and tear and play a role in the final for the World Series. New York and Cleveland, that's about an hour flight. That's pretty easy. And so I think the proximity is going to help those teams a little bit more. I think in the end, it's going to be, the horses. And man, that Cleveland New York series is a tough call. Like that's a coin flip for me.
Okay, fair enough. Jay, I don't think it's that Trent doesn't know the Brewer launch pad to the World Series, but after Mark, Candy's going to come on and explain that. Okay, so with that said, we'll go ahead and turn over to Mark. How do you see these two series playing out? And then I'll get mine, and we'll go to her fact.
I don't have much to say. You guys have been dominating the conversation, especially the little man over there. Yeah, I like the Dodgers, and I definitely like the Yankees. I mean,
okay.
All that travel, everything I was thinking was said. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
It's okay. You know what? I like the Dodgers to end up beating the Mets, go 7. But I'll tell you what, I do have a feeling about the Yankees Guardians. I think the Yankees are going to beat them in 5. There's no way you can get away with that bullpen strategy against a heavy hitting team like the Yankees. I don't see it. And here's what the ultimate result is: that series that everybody wants to see. They want to see the Dodgers and they want to see the Yankees, dated back to 1981. We've seen so many interesting things happen all year. And with that said, hey, listen, we just saw Kansas City and the Yankees, and we're talking about the late 70s and early 80s. Reappear. I can see the Dodgers and the Yankees. And I'm going to tell you, there's nothing that Fox would want more than to have New York and LA, the two most prestigious franchises. Because if you want to know what viewership numbers are going to be, mark my word, I will have that as a topic in a future show. The ratings will actually be booming from here to Iceland, all the way to Europe and down to below the equator. So there you go. Fox wants the Dodgers and the Yankees.
Yeah,
I believe it will be the Dodgers and the Yankees, and I don't give the Guardians but 5 games before their pitching chaos ultimately goes away. All right, Katie, why don't you bring up that fact about the Brewer launch pad to the World Series, okay? Because he does make an excellent point.
So the teams that eliminated the Brewers in the postseason have all made it and reached the World Series. The Yankees back in 81 defeated Milwaukee in the ALDS, reached the World Series. St. Louis in 82 defeated Milwaukee in the World Series. Obviously, they won. The Phillies in 2008 defeated Milwaukee in the NLDS. They won the World Series. The St. Louis Cardinals in 2011 defeated Milwaukee in the NLCS, won the World Series. In 2018, the Dodgers defeated Milwaukee in the NLCS, went on to the World Series. 2019, Nationals defeated Milwaukee in the wild card, went on to the World Series. 2020, the Dodgers again defeated Milwaukee in the wild card, went on to win the World Series. Atlanta in 2021 defeated Milwaukee in the NLDS, went on to win the World Series. 2023, Arizona Diamondbacks defeated Milwaukee in the wild card, went on to the World Series. And the New York Mets took out the Brewers this year. Mm-hmm. We have yet to see if they will make it to the World Series. But it does seem like the Brewers were a launching pad for all those other teams.
There you go, Trent. Katie gave you some information. And you know what? Jay put it out there. So with that said, Trent, did you learn us a little something tonight?
I think that's a great learning, and the streak has to end sometime, and that time is now.
You know, the
All
barber
right,
can do
well,
some learning.
it could, but right now that stat is currently active now.
It is active. Yeah.
Well, it is, yeah. I mean, let's face the reality. The Mets are playing on house money. That's all I'm going to say. They are really
Yeah.
playing on house money. Remember that, and in case you're joining us, the stat that I mentioned earlier is the fact that on June 2nd, the Mets were 24-35, and they were the third worst record in the National League. So house money, you bet. Final topic of the night.
Hey, hold on. That's just real quick, Motor City. That is 25 games over 500 since June 2nd.
There you go.
That's pretty legitimate baseball right there.
Yeah, well, thanks for adding that. The more the merrier. Thank you, Trent. Appreciate you, buddy. All right, now, final topic of the night. Clayton Kershaw plans to pitch in 2025. Says his arm feels great. George, you believe it?
Well, I mean, he's optimistic he can come back and be effective, but I don't know. It's very tough. He's no spring chicken anymore. And it's going to be, I would say, less than a 50-50 chance that he's going to be successful. I mean, I wish he would be able to be. I mean, Verlander's, he's had issues. Scherzer's had issues. These guys are getting older, and it's not always easier. But I like Clayton. I like what he did. I mean, he's had a great career for the Dodgers. I hope I wish he has good luck, but I kind of doubt. Scott, I would say less than a 50% chance that that's going to happen.
Okay, that's a fair comment, George.
Yeah.
What about you, Eric?
I mean, at this point in his career, don't get me wrong. I love Clayton Kershaw. I mean, not only a great player, but also a great person as well. The thing about it is, I feel like he's retired and he doesn't know it yet. That's just the way that is. There's a reason that he's getting hurt as much as he is, and he's not bouncing back like he would be if he was younger. Like, pitching is really, I think some people could attest to this. Pitching is really not healthy for you, because it's not healthy for the body to swing in your arm in one circular motion thousands of times a year. It's really not. There's a reason that guys are getting Tommy John more than ever now. But it's, to be like as much, I think he's just coming back so he can just get his, I believe, 3,000 strikeouts or what have you. And I think he wants to go out that way. But other than that, though, he's really retired and doesn't know it yet. Eventually, his body's going to give out, and it already is.
Okay, let's go back to the chat room and see a few interesting ones I want to put up there, and we'll take it right up. Okay, we'll start from this first one. We're just going to put them up there. Okay, Jay, I want the Mets versus Guardians. Would have
Good luck.
never wanted the Mets until Candy gave that crazy stat. Well, crazy as it is, it's out there. That's a crazy stat. How much Milwaukee loses in the playoffs? Okay,
They're like the Twins.
oh, there you go.
At least
And
they
you know
got
what?
there.
Let me tell you one thing, Eric. Say if he's harsh if you want, but this kid knows his stuff. And Mark, do you believe in those kind of stats of the Brewers being a World Series launch pad? So strictly for you, Mark.
No, I don't. I think it's just potluck that it's happened. I mean, I know it sounds like it would be something, but to me, it's just, it's just lucky. And I agree with you, Trent. I think the time is now. It's going to change.
Keep in mind too, the teams that were playing the Brewers, particularly the Braves in 21, and then particularly the Braves in the 21, and also the Diamondbacks, they were really hot going into the postseason. Same with the Mets. So I think part of it is the three teams that played the Brewers were just extremely hot going into it. So I think that has something to do with it as well. Unfortunately, the Brewers just happened to be the victim of that success.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on to the next one. What else would you say? You can't say it doesn't feel the same. George, I'll agree with you though. Okay, Eric is harsh, retired, and doesn't know it yet. You would say one thing about the one thing about Eric is he is harsh, but he backs up a lot of things with good facts and is knowledgeable on that. But you are right, he is harsh. That's why I love having him on the show. Mm-hmm. A young guy that is harsh and knows his stuff is a rare combination to find these days. So more power to him. But I see your point. But don't worry, Jay, you'll get used to him. Why did that trend of starting relievers like the A's seem to stop and go away so quickly? I actually thought it would catch on, but it seemed to fade away. Anybody want to answer that?
Yeah.
Well, it's not fading away. I mean, the Detroit Tigers and AJ Hinch proved it to be successful. at least since August when that team went on a roll. So, Jay, I don't know if you mean, no, it's not adopted. It's not adopted by every major league team. Of course not. And it won't be, but when it's a stopgap and you're successful, like Hinch and the Tigers were, hats off to them. But, we've seen it. We all know that the starting pitchers are, it's a rare breed now to go more than 5 or 6 innings.
Yeah, well, don't forget Kevin Cash either. Here's a guy that went out there.
Yes.
He
Yep.
started it and started winning with it, pulling starting pitchers out at key times. And of course, now everybody else knows when you don't have a legitimate starting staff, you have to make the most of what you have. The only problem with that strategy is these teams see these pitchers every single day. They get used to them. Go ahead, Eric.
Yep.
Well, I don't think it's going away. It's still a thing. The Giants tried to make it kind of tried to model the Rays last season by doing it, but it worked until it didn't in September when the relievers gassed out down the stretch. But I don't think it's going away. To be truthful, I think relievers are becoming an even bigger part of the game these days. I don't think that's just attributed to the Rays. I think part of that too is these front offices kind of live within their fears about their pitcher going down. Gone are the days where you have a guy throwing 120 plus pitches. If that were to happen today, I can guarantee you the owner and general manager would be passing out in their suite. But the bullpen's just a bigger part of the game. I have mixed feelings about it, but it's just the way the game's going. There's not a whole lot you can do there when the game's going a certain direction. I'm sure they said the same thing when home runs started to become bigger.
Okay, all right, go ahead, Mark.
The opener has been used by the Pirates for like the last 5 years. When you have a shitty starting rotation, you got to dip into that bullpen, unfortunately. And I mean, like, I've watched it for the last 4 or 5 years. Doesn't mean it was a good look, but yeah, 100%. It's not going away. Huh?
Or a cheap owner.
I'll tell you what, Eric, you're talking about the owner being in the office and making calls. That dude ain't anywhere. He's nowhere near the Pirates. I'll tell you that much right now. He brought in the guy that ran the Penguins when they won cups, and he left it all on his plate. And then all he does is tell Cherington how much money he could spend. Otherwise, that guy doesn't have any. He doesn't even know who probably half his players are. That's the kind of owner.
That sounds like John. Actually, not true. Not true. At least he could name Andrew McCutchen.
Well, I said half of his players.
Yep. Well, no, I think he could name a little more. You cannot say he's nearly as bad as John Fisher, because you cannot say that, because he at least can. I'm sure he can probably name Paul Skeens, and I'm sure he can probably name Mitch Keller, who's a real innings eater, by the way, which is what you want. But I'm sure he can name a little more than John Fisher can. So just when you think your ownership is bad, there's always John Fisher to lean on, Barber Boy.
There you go. All right, back to the chat room real quick. I haven't forgotten about Trent and Mark about Clayton Kershaw. We're going to get those comments. I want to make sure that we.
Oh, thank you, Jay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And I'll just put them up. Awesome. Appreciate the takes. And say, of course, no surprise. All right. Eric, was there one last thing you want to add before I conclude the topic?
No, I was putting the peace on up because I thought the barber was going to kill me.
Oh, okay.
No, dude, no. I threw a little shot at you. I get it.
Yeah. Okay.
Just having fun. We're just having fun.
Always, yeah.
All right.
Cool. It was like in Austin Powers where the baby's kind of hanging there, and then Austin's like peace, and it gets kicked off.
That is funny. All right. Well, that said, let's go to talk to Trent, who's patiently waiting to give us his takes on this Clayton Kershaw playing in 2025.
Yeah, it's not. We kind of had this conversation earlier about Maddox, at the end of the career. Like, if you can pitch, you can pitch. And there's no other job in the world. You can go make $10 million a year and throw and probably start 20 games next year or whatever. So he's going to get paid handsomely to do it. I appreciate that he's just not taking the insurance policy and going home. I also like the fact that stranger things, man. Stranger things. There's been a lot of guys who caught fire at the end of their career. We talked about Frank Tanana. We talked about people adapting. Clayton Kershaw knows how to pitch. So if he can get healthy, you never know. And the other thing is, Clayton Kershaw's never thrown out of the 4 or 5 spot. And all of a sudden, you put him back there where no one's got a lot of high expectations. He just might sneak 12, 13 games out of that slot. Because when Clayton Kershaw goes head-to-head against a 4 spot, like, that's not going to be good for the opponents if he is 85% healthy.
I like that. That was good. All right, Mark. I'll follow it up.
I agree with Eric. Again, I agree with Eric here. I think that Kershaw he's done. Like I honestly believe that he's just a shell of the guy he was. You'll probably get something out of him, but I can't see it happen. It's like guys like Verlander. I mean, those guys are done with their careers. They need to move on. Coming back to baseball is not doing anybody any good. You know, they're spending a lot of money on these guys, and I don't think it's right. There's young guys waiting for their opportunity to come up to the bigs and play, and they're going to give something a little bit more because they're going to be motivated. I get it, and I agree that, you know, that those guys are all good guys, but you got to know when to say I'm done and walk away. You're just hurting your organization.
All right, the only thing I'm going to add to this, because you guys have all covered it well in your own ways, is this. At the rate Clayton Kershaw is going, he's going to end up being today's version of Sandy Koufax. Played his entire career with one organization, albeit shorter because of arm issues. And yet I still think Clayton Kershaw would have a puncher's chance to get in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Koufax did, and I think Kershaw will as well, but we'll see. But I'm not holding my breath on this one, that's for sure.
He will get in. He will get in. He's got multiple Cy Young awards. He's been to the All-Star game a bunch of times. He was he's won a World Series. Even without the World Series, he'd still get in. He's on the verge of getting 3,000 strikeouts. If he does it right next year, he'll be there.
Yeah. So again, that's my comparison. I do believe that Clayton Kershaw to me will be the modern version. Well, I mean, will be comparable to Sandy Koufax. That's what I think. Speaking of Koufax, Jay adds Koufax versus Bob Gibson, who was better. You know what? I want to start on this one. As much as I like Sandy Koufax, I'd go Bob Gibson. I really would. Mark, I'll let you start this one off.
Well, didn't Gibson have 30 wins that one year? He was pitching complete game. Am I thinking of the right guy?
No,
Danny McClain, 30.
My bad. But Gibson, how many complete games Gibson pitched? He pitched tons of innings. The guy never had an arm problem. You know, like it's just ridiculous to me that these guys can't go 7, 8, 9 innings anymore, that they're getting yanked for when relievers. But back to where we were, I'm leaning on Gibson too. I think he was a better pitcher than Koufax. Although I'll be honest with you, I don't remember Koufax.
That's fine.
I mean, I remember as a player. I've seen video footage, but I do remember Gibson.
That's fine. Well, he's dominating in the 67 and 68 World Series. Obviously, we know how that turned out. I'll turn over to Trent.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't compare these two guys. I mean, they are both legends in their own very different styles. I mean, Koufax, absolutely a carve guy, can carve people up. Lefty, pretty effective from everywhere and mild-mannered. I mean, Bob Gibson's the ultimate power pitcher, just coming right at you, snarling, intimidating. Koufax was never an intimidating guy. I mean, these two guys are just the extreme opposites and both equally legendary in their own style. So I don't know how you compare the two, other than they're both fabulous. So I wouldn't pick one over the other.
That's all right. It's fair. All right, Eric, go ahead.
Well, obviously they're both great in their own way. They're both very different pitchers for what they were. Obviously, Koufax would try and get you off balance while Gibson would throw it at you right away. But when they have to move the mound back because of how great you are, and because no one else could hit the ball, I think that goes without saying, and that's what they did for Bob Gibson. When they have to literally move the very thing you pitch on because of how great you are, that goes just with how great he was. Plus, he wasn't afraid to come up and in on guys. I mean, he threw at Carl Yastrzemski in the World Series, and he was not afraid. I mean, it doesn't matter the situation. He with his high heat, he would pound you. And this was back in the day where they were going for your head. You can't do that now, but they would literally go after your head, and he would throw it in there, come hell or high water, 90, probably at least 98 miles an hour for the time without the radar gun, and he would get you. That's the kind of guy he was. Plus, he also racked up a lot of strikeouts, and he's in the Hall of Fame for a reason.
All right, let's go. I have a couple of comments, and we'll conclude with George. Eric equals little buddy Mark, the Captain Gilligan reference. I like that. That thing's pretty funny. All right,
I know the
and let's
show.
go. And let's go to the final one. Little buddy with amazing historical fact about the mountain. Eric is no normal young kid here. This guy knows a lot of stuff. In fact, first time we ever talked on the phone, as I got to know him through Twitter, by the way.
4
Eric
hours.
talked. We were on the phone like 4 hours.
Yeah, it was.
Gosh. For a guy like me having voice issues these days, thank God I didn't have them back then, or I would have made it. But Eric knows his stuff. That's why he's carved out a niche on this show.
I wouldn't go Gilligan. I wouldn't go the Gilligan reference. I'd probably say more Hawkeye and BJ and MASH. I'd probably say more along that line.
Well, he thought
I was
Gilligan.
gonna go with like Schwarzenegger and DeVito and twins, bro.
That's funny. Well, say what you want, but that was his opinion, anyways, and the ones in the chat room. All right, George.
Well, the job that Gibson did in 67 and 68, are you kidding me? They defeated the Bo Sox in 67. The Tigers took them to 7 games. They were very fortunate. He was just lights out in game 1. Oh, my God. Tigers, none of the bats. Horton, Cash, K-Line, none of them could hit him in the 68 series until until his second or third appearance, and then they got a few hits off of him. I got to go with Gibson. I also have to plead a little ignorance here because I did not follow Koufax's career. Obviously, I've read up on him and seen some film on him. Unbelievable. And like you said, Trent, I think you're the one that mentioned that they're both very different pitchers. Very difficult to compare the two. They were both outstanding. Tigers were fortunate to get that series in 68 because they had a guy named Mickey Lolich winning 3 games.
People forget about him.
Yeah.
Really forget about him.
Yeah.
Well,
So anyway.
let me make one interesting observation. It's pretty straightforward. Nothing against George at all. Obviously we worked with the Detroit Monitor for over 4 decades, and to George's credit, he has a pretty good stranglehold on a lot of the local stuff. Whereas with me, I've also done a lot more on the national side. With the Monitor, as well as what we have now, the South Florida Tribune and so forth. So I can appreciate his local perspective about making local references. But keep in mind that Candy Ebling and I have been to all Cactus League venues. We have like another handful left to go. And the Grapefruit League at some point we'll probably get around to doing it. So I can appreciate all sides. That was a really good question. That could have been a topic, but you know what? Since we're talking postseason, you talk about Koufax and Gibson being prominent postseason. Jay, it really does fit in pretty well with what we're doing tonight. Also, he says carve guy. That's a great descriptor. There you go. That was pretty good. So,
I appreciate the the difference of the power guy of Bob Gibson and as Eric referenced, coming at your head. We call it ear holing you because he's going to stick it right in your ear hole. So, and probably that was never a factor for Koufax. Getting comfortable in the box and finding Koufax's speed because he's a great speed change guy. That's a factor to be a hitter, but never uncomfortable like he's coming up in your ear hole because you do have time to get out of the way. Bob Gibson, you do not have time to get out of the way. So there's a lot of happy feet in that box, and it's personal safety. Like you want to actually, leave with your teeth. So I appreciate the intimidation factor because it's a serious one. But I think I'm going to stick with the fact that it's a tough comparison. They're very legendary guys in very different ways.
Right.
Yeah, obviously Jay knows my favorite words. For a lot of you folks that are just joining us, I like the word seriously, really. Those are my favorite words that keep me away from language that's not desirable for the average individual in order to keep it G-rated, okay? And you guys can read it any way you want. George Acorn's usually on the interesting wrath of the seriously and really comments, but he handles it well. But yeah, nevertheless, so yeah, a lot of the chat room stuff is unbelievable. I love reading it. I just think it's fantastic. And it adds a certain dimension to what we're already doing.
Yeah,
so,
and I just did a little research, Scott, and I did not know that Koufax three times won the pitching Triple Crown. So that says a lot right there.
Well, you know what? Let me tell you,
Football,
I had the good fortune of meeting Sandy Koufax actually in 1985 when I covered the Florida State League All-Star game over in Osceola, Florida, Kissimmee, where the Astros used to change. Again, that's in my book. I don't mention Sandy, but if you once you pick up my book, you'll understand what that venue means. But yeah, Sandy was great. I went the day before for the lunch that they had before. It was just sensational. Great
Yeah.
stuff by everybody tonight. We're not going to do any parting shots. I think we were pretty loaded in the first place.
Yep.
But Candy's going to take over. Take us home, Candy.
The South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book last November called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by your host, Scott, the Motor City Mad Mouth Morganroth. And the foreword was written by none other than George Eichhorn. Both are on the panel tonight. It talks about Scott's 40 plus years in the media business and how media has changed over the 40 years. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Apple, and Google Books. There's a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where Scott writes, George writes, I take pictures. And there's a plethora of more people that write for us and content that we get from local sports down here in South Florida. If you'd like to listen to podcasts, catch us wherever you get your podcast, iHeartRadio, Google, Apple, you name it, we're there. Monday nights, we talk baseball. Tuesday nights, we talk football. Wednesday and Thursday nights, you never know what topics we're going to have on, except Thursday nights, we also have a hockey show called Fire Up Florida. Scott does a show on Wednesday nights, him, George, and Jeremy, and it's on nofilter.net. Twitter at Tribune South. At Tribune South. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. I think that's it, Scott.
I don't know. How many authors do we have on the show, Candy?
Well, we have 3 authors on the show.
Okay.
We have 3. We have one that wrote this Lessons from the Microphone, one that wrote Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air, and one that wrote Leading Winning Teams. I don't know who wrote that one. Just kidding, Trent.
Don't violate the uniform like that.
I hear you. But I figured I would let everybody else tell how they can get a hold of them. So let's start with George. Since you're in the corner, I'm going to put your book up right next to you. Go for it.
All righty. Thank you, Candy. I appreciate that. And I write for Scott and Candy, the South Florida Tribune, under the Motor City Tribune. You'll find my columns. At the end of those columns is a link if you want to purchase my book, Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. Otherwise, you can reach me at gicorn@yahoo.com and also on Twitter at sandgsports99. And I'm part of the great talent here tonight, 108 Stitches. And of course, with Jamie and Scott on the Wednesday night show, as well as the Sports Exchange, and enjoy all these great shows. So thanks for having me on.
Eric, where can we find you?
You can find me on my Twitter account or X, whatever people call it these days, at Sports Team News, or you can follow me on my blog at bellyupsports.com, where I write about all things baseball. And George, you'll love it. I most recently wrote about the Detroit Tigers winning window opening up.
Oh, well, that's great.
Hey, I love the run. I did.
That's good.
Trent,
I'll make sure.
Yeah, you can reach me at Trent@leadershipity.com. That's leadershipity.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Trent M. Clark. And you can find me on all my Twitter handles, which are X, and all my socials will either be at Leadershipity or at Trent M. Clark. Find the book anywhere. Oh, wrong one. Find the book anywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can find it on all sorts of stuff. BAM, Books A Million, and it's on Kindle now. And the Audible is coming out November 12th. So fired up about the audio version.
awesome. Okay, Scott, back to you.
All right. Well, Mark Meraday apparently lost connection. Hopefully gets on by the end of it. But nevertheless, good show tonight. Obviously, Mark is a fixture on this show, and you can find his stuff on OSP with MM. That's his show. Mark's a tremendous guy. I met him actually in person at Cooperstown, New York, is what I did. And of course, we had connected through Twitter as well. So, with that said, Candy gave it all. As far as I'm concerned, you know about the book. It was 44 plus years in the making, and George and I started a lot of pretty good things. And thankfully, it's been able to go out there and carry on as time goes on. So, with that said, again, you know, the road to the Fall Classic, we try to give you the best picture that we can, and we'll see how it all plays out. Next week, we'll probably talk about the World Series, as these series are going to move fast and furious as the postseason does with October baseball. So, on behalf of Mark Meraday, Trent Clark, George Eichhorn, Mary Kent, and our executive producer, Candy Ebling, this concludes this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, the road to the Fall Classic, and we will catch you next week. So take care, everybody, and looking forward to finding out exactly what we have. Anything else you want to add, Trent? You know, flash those rings up. Atta boy.
Got the rings.
All right. So we'll see you next Monday night, 8 o'clock Eastern time. Have a great week, folks.
Nice.